any parent or a new parent, say a 1, 2, 3 year old kid's parent, should look out for in their kids as, like, as a standard or as something that might be a little off?
Um, it's also important to know if your child is lagging behind. And the only way you will know is when you actually compare them to the developmental milestones, the age appropriate developmental milestones. I mean, I'm not saying compare your kids to other kids all the time and be like, he's doing this, why isn't my child doing this? It's about being, it's about just being aware and cognizant of the age range that is typical for certain developments. And if your child has not met those milestones and is consistently not meeting milestones, in different areas, and there are different areas of development. There's cognitive, there is social emotional, there is gross motor, fine motor, and if your child is not consistently not meeting those developments in any one specific area or just globally, then it is something that should be alarming for the parents. Are like speech milestones, by 1 year, by 1.5 years, the child should have at least few words in their vocabulary, or and by 2 years the child should be speaking in sentences. The motor skills, like the child should be able to sit by 6 months, crawl by 8 months, walk by 10 months, by 12 months, like around 1 year. If your child doesn't show any interest in walking, or like clearly the child hasn't had enough opportunities, there are lots of people in the family and everyone picks up the child all the time, that child is generally going to be walking later. Okay, so it's about that. It's about understanding, it's about basically understanding the environment the child is in, and it's about giving them the opportunities to do it while being aware of and cognizant of these ranges.
Yeah. So what would be, how would your strategy change for parents who are taking care of their kids alone? And with the lockdown, a lot of parents had to do that. And parents who have full support of the family, which can also sometimes be bad for the child's development, because he or she doesn't get the chance to actually reach his milestone.
There are pros and cons to both. Having so many people that the child can interact with, really does benefit the child in so many ways. But at the same time, a lot of things are tossed out of the window in terms of the schedule, in terms of the child's, responding to the child's needs, independence. That's one of the biggest things we see when a child is in a joint family setup, where there are grandparents in the house, or when there are like lots of other people in the house. At the same time, with nuclear families, like a lot of times what happens is both parents are working, and that's the reality of our life now. And how much can you actually balance your work and give the same amount of time to your child, the child that requires your attention? Is the child spending most of the time with nanny? Like, it's a trade-off. And I say this to all new mothers, that you will have to be the villain. You will have to put your foot down, and you will have to dictate basically the terms to be that needs to be followed with your child. Like, if there has to be a schedule, there has to be a schedule for your child. There has to be a certain time the child has to go to bed. Working from home has been a boon to a lot of new parents, because they can
Yeah.
spend that kind of time with their kids. But the time that you do spend with your child, it has to be quality. It has to be without a phone. It has to be without a screen. It can be a meal that you spend with your child. It can be, some activities that you do with them. It can just be as simple as tucking them in, before bedtime, and reading a book to them and talking to them about how their day was. It can, it depends on the child's age, but whatever time that you spend with them, let that be a positive experience for the child and for you. Like, feed, a bath, like just have a schedule for them that needs to follow the pattern every time, and there has to be predictability to that scheduling or to that routine. Have that in place early on. Very soon you'll start seeing that your child responds very well to the schedule. You are able to understand your child's needs better, because you know that, oh, at this time my child does get hungry, and this time it's his feeding time. So it just becomes the communication. The child starts trusting you more, because you are more aware of your child's needs. Scheduling is definitely, routines and schedules are definitely, and it goes on till your child is in school. So many benefits of having routines, that it's just, yes, it's a struggle the first year, but it just becomes so smooth sailing after that. There is such high emphasis on us waking up early, but that emphasis is missing on going to bed early, you know.
Definitely. I mean, along with screen addiction, there are going to be a lot of other difficulties. And with the whole screen time aspect, I mean, not all the screen times are bad, right? I mean, some of the screen time, in that screen time also, like now a lot of educational schooling and all those things are happening virtually. Like you said, everything
Right.
has gone online. So that sort of screen time is okay. So there have been studies in UK where they took the EEGs of people watching videos, people watching all these like educational videos, people watching all these game videos, people actually playing videos, and then people having a video call. And there was a drastic difference. I mean, the people, I mean, there was definitely, I mean, like now how we are talking, like you and I are talking, and there isn't a lot of movement. Maybe just my hands are moving, but there isn't much movement, and our facial expression, that's the only aspect that's moving. But when you're watching a movie, there's a lot of movement happening, so that's going to stimulate us. Like in a similar way, when the child is doing class online, like schooling online, there's not much of movement happening, so that's not going to stimulate the child's brain the way a, a video or a rhyme or a story would stimulate the child. And again, the graphics makes a lot of difference, because what is going to happen is, first is the child is going to sit in one place and watch it with full focus and attention on the screen. What is going to happen is their visual system and their auditory system is going to get overstimulated, while their other systems, like the other sensory systems, are not going to get stimulated. And that's basically going to cause some sort of mismatch, which will definitely have some sort of impact on the development of the child. And with the screen time, they don't have to do anything to get their their nervous system, their sensory system stimulated. It's just
Right.
sitting in front of the screen and
And everything
getting
happens
the
on its
things.
own. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no physical movement as such happening. But when the child is given that opportunity, where the child is himself or herself exploring the toys, a lot of sensory as well as the motor aspect is being used. So that helps. So, and this happens when there is a set routine for the child. They can productively use the screen time for the child to getting to know the other family members. So the parents can set up like sort of virtual meetings with the other extended families, relatives, or they can set up play dates. Instead, if you're giving the child a screen time, and if there is that liberty to show that whole thing on a bigger screen, and the child is
Oh,
sitting away from away from the screen, like
so it's not the
maybe
only thing
sort of,
that the child doesn't basically zone
yeah,
in on something.
yeah,
Like
yes,
the whole bigger picture is in front of him, so he can interact with others as well as
yeah,
be engaged by the
yeah.
screen.
So we definitely need to take into consideration the whole usage of productive screen time, instead of just sort of using screen time for their engagement, which is not going to cause any sort of nourishment for the brain.
Okay, so pediatric dentistry actually is, you can say, a very broad field, which comprises of all the aspects of dentistry that a general dentist does. I can say that what is added with pediatric dentistry is something like prevention, how they can encourage themselves to avoid getting cavities or any kind of malformations on the face or functions. Okay, another thing that we add as pediatric dentist to dentistry is the behavior management part. We have to, every child is unique, and there is going to be a special way to treat every child. So that's what we do. We use more of tender love care while treating. A lot of other behavior management techniques that we use, apart from what is done for adults. Yes. And third thing, I think that what we contribute in dentistry as pediatric dentists is mainly the functional development that we look for, breathing, chewing, swallowing, even correct sleep. Those patterns can be developed and helped by us as pediatric dentists. Even the statistics say that more than 50% of the children in India under the age of 5 years are affected by dental decay. So that these teeth, if preserved very well in the mouth, they will preserve space for the natural, a permanent teeth to come naturally in the correct position. There are only few things that are required. And in my practice, I usually categorize them as things that can be done at home by the parents and things that can be done at the clinic by the doctor and the patient. So there are a lot of tooth creams that are available. I advise them to my children. Even age-specific toothbrushes and toothpaste. Age-specific is something that is very crucial here. Is something that I tell them and show them how to do it. And the things that I do at my practice, and these were home measures. Certain things that we do at our clinic includes fluoride application. Now, fluoride application is something that can deliver amazing results in 2 years, and you can witness that. And the second point that I like doing at my practice is sealing the teeth. There are a lot of children who develop decay in the milk teeth. So that is an alarm to us कि अभी permanent दांत भी बिगड़ने वाला है. Okay. So there are certain permanent teeth that come right at the age of 6. Basically the permanent molars we call them. We seal them with a thin thread-like material. It's thread-like, it flows into the deep areas of the tooth and seals them correctly. So managing behaviors can be done in the operatory or in the outside operatory, that could be in a hospital setup. So when we manage behaviors in the operatory, it's usually verbal, like we may talk to the child, we may put some good movies or some cartoon things, or we may calm them with some good music. Basically, behavior management is to achieve a rapport with the child so that he or she develops trust in the operator. So what functional development is something that I can correlate with Ishan Awasthi. Now I'm going to tell you 2-3 things. Now Ishan Awasthi was little functionally also damaged. Obviously, I'm not commenting on the person, I'm commenting on the character. What happens is when our breathing, chewing, swallowing are incorrect, obviously the nutrients that are required by the body are not taken up. For example, a child who is a mouth breather, a person who breathes through mouth, maybe a child who snores at night, okay, they will breathe through the mouth. So the oxygen that has to be captured, that has to be taken by the blood is lungs, and the blood is not taken up to 100% of its capacity. That happens with the nasal breathing. Obviously the child is going to be less attentive in class and more sleepy throughout, right? At the same time, if the child is mouth breathing, when the child breathes through the nose, the entire development of upper jaw takes place naturally. When I'm breathing through nose, the air flows nicely through my upper jaw and reaches the lungs. We've heard of sinuses. So the air nicely rotates inside that. When the child breathes through mouth, again, that goes missing, which is why we've seen children with long faces and flat cheeks. I think we are what we eat. Okay. So if we eat well, if we eat something that is going to give exercise to your teeth, obviously it is going to give exercise to the muscles. It is going to give good fiber to your teeth to naturally clean the teeth. We don't need brush ka fibers to clean the teeth. Okay, so that's how it is. Age specifically, we need to encourage eating, develop eating patterns.
Discussing a lot of distressed mothers facing a lot of issues during this lockdown regarding their children's oral hygiene. What do you have to say about that?
So I think difficult times, definitely not recommended to enter the dental clinic unless absolutely necessary.
Right.
But there are a lot of things that you can do at home to make sure that your child's teeth don't get worse over these trying times.
Right.
For the children, as soon as the teeth start erupting in the mouth, you need to start brushing them, right?
Right.
So when the first tooth erupts, you can either even take a muslin cloth and wet it and clean the tooth, or
Right.
you can actually then move on to your finger brush, the one that you can slip on. The mother can
Right.
slip onto her finger and then brush all the teeth. So moving to the question at hand, the most important thing that you need to remember is you need to brush twice daily. All children and all adults need to brush twice daily. It is extremely difficult to get kids to brush in the night before sleeping. They're extremely fussy, but if you keep at it and you keep reinforcing it to your child, eventually they will learn to brush twice a day. Toothbrushing needs to be supervised until they're about 6 or 7 years of age, and you need to stand behind the child. And this is basically how they're supposed to position yourself. Everybody asks me which toothpaste is the best, which toothbrush is the best. So to answer that, the brand doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which brand you're going for, but what you need to understand is the concept of fluoride. Fluoride is something which protects young teeth and adult teeth and makes it strong and prevents cavities. How much toothpaste? So I think this slide is self-explanatory, but a grain size for under 3 and a pea size for 3 to 6. Brush. So my famous saying is whatever works, right? You want them in there for at least 2 minutes, and that is hard enough. And no hard toothbrushes. Besides that, in terms of soft and medium or even battery operated toothbrushes, anything is all right as long as they're in there for 2 minutes twice a day brushing their teeth. What you could do to motivate them is make a chart and then give them stars for morning and evening. That works wonderfully on most kids after 4 years of age because they want all the stars on that month, and that's when they start brushing twice a day. Basically about 3 rules that I ask all my children to follow once they start brushing their teeth themselves. So I'm going to do the demonstration of how to brush your teeth. We have a model here. The first thing I'm going to tell my kids is don't just scrub and run out. First of all, no scrubbing. Second of all, no running out once this is done. Right? So the correct way to do it is up and down and all around. Right? Cannot forget any of your teeth. You need to remember to go all the way to the last tooth, right? Most kids only brush their front teeth and miss out on their back teeth, as well as adults actually.
Right.
The third thing you need to remember is there are 3 surfaces to your tooth: the outside surface, the top surface, and the inside surface. So we need to clean all 3 surfaces. Diet plays an extremely important part in terms of dental health because the number one reason for cavity formation is sugar, right? And all the rules of healthy eating actually apply to your teeth as well, right? But the way to kind of get them to reduce it is not to punish them. So what you want is for your child to come and tell you that this is what has been given to me and this is what I've eaten at so-and-so's place. So if you're extremely strict about it, you're going to shut this communication down and then you're not going to know what is happening otherwise. The way that I get kids to actually come down to my once a week chocolate rule, you need to make a chocolate box and keep it in your cupboard. You collect all the chocolates, keep it there. You can only eat it on a Saturday or Sunday. You have small chocolates 10 times a day. It's far, far worse than sitting with a big bar once a day. So all the chocolate needs to go in at one time. All the sugar needs to go in at one time. And the last meal of the day cannot be sugar, right? Yes. So I want all mothers to remember from my conversation with you, the first rule is to brush twice daily. You cannot forget that rule. The second take-home message is how to brush. Basically, all your surfaces up to the last tooth and no scrubbing. And my third and last thing that I want them to remember is chocolates are only once a week.
We have also heard from a lot of experts, and there's a lot of talk going on about how the third wave is going to affect children more often than not, more commonly. So can you tell us the common symptoms that you've observed in children who are COVID positive and what parents should look out for?
Yeah, so a lot of the children these days are turning positive because their family members are becoming positive. As such, children don't tend to go out much. and it's usually from the family members that they get the infection. Fever is one of the most common symptom that they're developing, and it is lasting for 1 or 2 days most of the times. Vomiting, diarrhea, cough, cold, and some of them have a sore throat. So these are the common symptoms, Dr. Chanvi. Yeah. So the only children who are turning sick are very young ones, or those with a heart condition or a chronic lung condition, whether they have compromised power to fight the infection, and then you also have children with cancer sometimes, and children with immunocompromised states. So these are the few conditions where kidney conditions, liver conditions, lung conditions, and cancers, where children are usually having a bit of reduced immunity compared to normal kids. So these are the kids where we are seeing the infection turn severe in many years. However, these are just not the rule. So the kid might just have cancer or any other condition and may come out completely fine. 90 to 95% of children with COVID infection are recovering well without any problems. And probably 5% are turning onto moderate infection or severe infection, which require admission and special medicines and hospitalized care. There are a smaller fraction who are developing a condition called a multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which is treatable and has other specific medications which need to be given. Yeah. So suppose you have simple symptoms like just cough, running nose, vomiting, or diarrhea. These are the other common symptoms in addition to the fever. So you just need to speak to your pediatrician either by a teleconsult or else by meeting them in person, and then take appropriate medications for them. However, there are a few things you should watch for and be careful of, and you should again consult them back again, which is when the fever is more than 3 days, more than or equal to 3 days. That is one thing. And suppose the vomitings and diarrhea are high in severity and it's persistent, child is not taking much intake, the urine is a bit less and he's feeling lethargic or dull. That's another time you should definitely go back and meet the pediatrician and take additional medicines for that. Now, there are a few atypical symptoms which you should know of when your child becomes COVID positive, which needs a definite visit to a pediatrician. These are red colored rash over body, or red lips, or red eyes, which is conjunctivitis, and inflammation of the tongue can be there, so red tongue, and also any cracking of the lips. Along with this, these are all inflammatory signs. It's a multi-system inflammatory syndrome. And you also have swellings in the neck area where the lymph nodes are, if the lymph nodes get enlarged. And also if suppose the child has any swelling of the hands and feet. So these are some of the symptoms which you should watch for, or red flag signs where you need to meet your pediatrician again. Tell you something about this multi-system inflammatory syndrome. So this is a new entity and has been seen over the last year when COVID has started. And when do we say this is there? So when fever is more than or equal to 3 days, when there has been a linkage to SARS-CoV-2. Suppose the child had COVID infection in the past 4 weeks or the recent past, or the child may be PCR positive now, or there may be a family member who tested positive. So it may not be that the child may be having the infection now, but even if the child had infection in the past, a recent past, even then the multi-system inflammatory syndrome can be diagnosed if they have the clinical features which we talked about. So a lot of children these days are getting COVID and they're recovering very well. However, it's important that once the COVID infection happens and they're getting cleared, we get them back to their normal state of functioning and they become like any other child, playing around and being with everybody else. So it's very important that you give psychological support to the child and also give good nutrition to the child so that they can gain their weight back to what the usual weight was. Give them a healthy, balanced diet, give them a lot of liquids, a lot of fluids, and a lot of healthy things. And also, you can follow the doctor's advice if you have been advised any multivitamins or anything else to carry on during this time. And that will definitely bring your child back to the normal state.